Chris, you have reached a status and elevation in life of being successful, but heavy is the head that gets to wear that crown. Describe a moment in your life, maybe when you felt the weight of that phrase. And what do you think it means?
I guess the first, well, not the first business, but the first probably serious tech business that we started, which became eLoan. We eventually took public, but it was very tough going in the early days. It's back in 95, 96, sort of the dawn of the internet, certainly before um, financial services were sort of even seen as something you could do online. There was a time when like that would have been the craziest idea, right? And yeah, so that was a struggle. We had to, raise money basically through our maxing out. This is my co-founder and I, maxing out our credit cards with no hope that anything was ever going to come of that. So that was an incredibly stressful. I mean, it took a long time, and we were at that for 10 years. But that first year, I'd say, was, I mean, you don't sleep, you don't really enjoy anything beyond stressful. Waking up every morning thinking, are you going to make your payroll? Um, just incredibly stressful. And in a way, once you have a bigger company and if it fails, there's some even maybe badge of honor in that. When you have a small company and nobody even knows it exists and you fail, in some ways that's even more harder to deal with. So yeah, just going through that absolute stress, no money, massive debt, and nobody to tell you you're doing the right thing. Lots of people saying you should stop. Yeah, that was pretty rough going.
So you were told to quit, to give up.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. The key thing about starting a business or starting a new innovative project is actually tuning out people I talk about this sometimes, but ignoring people you respect, right? I mean, the haters, that's actually easy to deal with because it actually kind of maybe bulks you up a little bit, right? Because now you're fighting. uh the worst kind of discouragement comes from the people that you respect, you trust, and in just about any new thing, they think they're maybe doing you a favor by saying things like that, especially when things aren't going well. And that's very hard to deal with. So a lot of this is drowning out sort of reality suspension, but drowning out voices you otherwise respect. And that's not easy to do.
So how do you do that? Do you develop some sort of rituals or coping mechanisms? I mean, how are you navigating through that? Because when people around you are telling you the bad, as opposed to saying, here's what I can do to help you. I mean, every entrepreneur has been in the place where people are telling you, quit, give up, fail. And some of them do quit and give up, but rarely do you hear the, what do you need? Because that's who
Yeah.
you are, Chris. You are, as I've gotten to know you over the years, you are an entrepreneur that succeeded, that looks to help others and say, what do you need?
Coping mechanisms. So one, I always found it really useful to read books on struggle, whether it be, some of the books on war and terrible wars can actually be quite inspiring because you see what others, it makes anything you're going through. I mean, come on, if you're an entrepreneur, you're not going to lose an arm, I mean, so let's put things in perspective, right? Failing in America at a business is a luxury in a way, right? This is not life or death. So, but reading about things like that actually, I think, helps. You know, crazy explorations that go wrong. The Shackleton story was always a classic one. We actually were assigned to read that at business school, and for good reason, because it's one about leadership, right? Uh, Keeping your enemies close, right? There are all kinds of good stuff in there. But mostly it's and of course the ship's name was the Endurance. It's a book of endurance, right? And businesses and new ventures. This is about endurance, right? I mean, it's you need to be able to take the stress of the moment, sure. But what you really need to be able to do is just hang in the pocket, right? For as long as it takes. So enduring, right? And again, there's some great books on this, right? Um, oh boy, what is the one, the vice president of Ross Perot, who he was going to, running as his running mate. Love and War, I think it's called, right? This horrible story of this, airmen taken prisoner in North Vietnam and enduring incredible torture and year after year after year after year. And how do you survive that, right? So you got to have the facts and faith. You got to face the brutal facts of your situation, or you're dead, if you don't face the brutal facts and live in a fantasy land. But at the same time, you got to have the faith that you're going to get out the other side. And if you only face the facts and you don't have the faith, you also die, right? That was kind of his key lesson. So the people that made it through faced the horrible reality of where they were, but always had the faith that there's a brighter day ahead, right? And not fake faith. And he writes about it. It's not like, oh, we're going to get out by Christmas. He kind of used that as an example of the fellow prisoners that then became disheartened because they wouldn't get out at Christmas, nor the next Christmas, nor the Christmas after that, right? So faith is not a next Tuesday kind of thing. It's just, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I absolutely know it's going to happen, right? And that was a great mess. That was also a business school assigned book, had nothing to do with business, but everything to do with how do you endure.
So it sounds like you describe yourself as a learner, not a knower.
Well, that's an interesting question. I hope so, because I do think learning how to learn is one of the key lessons I took out of school. Because look, I'm 62. Anything I learned in school, even chemistry is completely the stuff I learned. It really doesn't even make any sense anymore, right? So, but learning how to learn and learning how to adapt and learning how to be resourceful and learning how to endure. There's some real pride and heroism in that I think even if you fail, but you did all of that, then you could fail with grace and honor. And if once you feel like whatever happens, I'll have the honor and grace of it. No, I didn't know that initially, but I've learned to appreciate that. Failing with grace, you should be proud of that. So, and then that relieves you of a lot of the stress. I think when I first started out, though, just the notion of failing, how can you face that? Oh my God, that would just be the most horrible thing. And the truth is, no, not at all, right? And especially in Silicon Valley, and is what makes Silicon Valley so special, is we're actually quite accepting of failure. I think that is kind of the secret sauce to the Bay Area. Failure is not frowned upon. If you do it right. Like now, if you're failing and you want to take down people with you and blow up a lot of bridges, just like anywhere else, you're toast. But if you fail here with honor and grace, it actually makes you stronger and a more sort of attractive target for capital the next time around.
It's interesting. What you say leads me to a place that you had this epiphany in your life. And maybe it was hearing the word emotional intelligence, or maybe it was recognizing you were starting to develop it. So when did you start to develop your emotional intelligence? Was there a moment? Was there an accelerant that kind of lit it up?
Yeah, good question. I think it's just kind of getting through hard times, maybe a critical number of times where you can look back and go, yeah. Okay, you can kind of remember. I mean, I just remember that first year, just the enormous stress and how horrible that was, and pitching to investors and getting no's, no. It felt so horrible in the moment. But now looking back, I'm like, whatever, come on, So I think it's just getting that perspective. And as you get older, this is natural because as you get older, people in your life pass away. So again, the ultimate put things in perspective. And in that way, I mean, you don't want to look at business like a game or like it's not serious. Of course it is. It's like all encompassing. But yeah, I think over time, maybe that's the wisdom of what life takes you through, putting things in perspective. starting a business in America is, I mean, what a privilege, right? So, and again, failure is part of the American formula. So once you realize that, it's like, yeah, as long as you're doing stuff with integrity and grace, and you're not trying to pocket your anger, that's really important. That took me a long time, actually. How do you channel your anger constructively? Because when you're in those stressful moments, it's very easy, I think, for anger to consume you. Anger at a competitor, anger at an investor that said no, anger at an employee or a team member that didn't do what they promised they were going to, you name it, right? Very easy to cross over into anger. Anger is almost always self-destructive. With I mean, there's a very, very few instances where it's an essential tool, but I always think it's like salt on a meal, a tiny, tiny bit, and anything more than that, and it's totally corrosive.
I think that's incredible advice. So you've obviously worked with lots of people over your career, and I just turned 40 in August, and it's kind of weird, by the way. But the Judas in your life, and I imagine you had a number of them along the way, that the Judas personality. How do you deal with them? Do you let them go? Do you cut the tether? Because the only person you can control is yourself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I mean, great advice in business is always, look, the minute you realize a person, team member, and probably, really, this more generally to any relationship, but the minute you realize this person is pulling you down, not part of the team, not going in the same direction. Yeah, and you always know, in your heart of hearts, the time between when you know and when you act is just wasted, terrible time, right? So, and we're all guilty of this, right? Whether it's out of I hope, or hey, I can fix this problem, or just need some more time, or maybe try to talk yourself out of it's not really that big of a deal, and I just don't, I'm just not going to go there. But every single time you do that, you recognize how, the second you knew it was the right call. So I gotten better. Oh, and I try to pass, obviously I'm not in the key operating role. I'm the exec chair. So, but I'm more giving advice to folks than actually doing stuff within the company. But,
Yeah.
that's the advice I give. Like, do you know this to be true? Yes. Everybody always says yes, but I want to give them a second chance, or I want to, try it a different way. And it's always the wrong call. So you follow your gut.
So people show you who they are typically the first time.
Well, no, it might take a long time to get that feeling, but once you got that feeling of this is just not the right team member, it never gets better, like never. So, you always sort of know the right thing.
So you also said something in there about your gut, trusting your gut. And I hear that time and time from high performance minds, successful individuals who say to trust your gut. How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't know how it comes about, but as I've gotten older, I've recognized, like, all the key good decisions in my life were always based on that feeling. And I can't really explain it. I just know, I know it now, and I've gotten better at recognizing it. And it's almost always pans out. So, yeah. I don't know if that's an accumulation of experiences and then it just feels like a gut thing, or if it's something else. But the more, and like, I was not in touch with this early on. As I've gotten older, though, it's crystal clear. So, yeah, there's something you said about that gut thing. So if you can try to build that muscle memory on the gut, that's a good thing.
Well,
I know, not to be confused by stress, though.
I understand. Well, that's kind of leading me to my next, because I'm hearing that this goes kind of with anybody in business. You've had a number of challenges thrown at you. So have there been any daily habits that you've adopted to contribute towards mental and emotional strength? Because heavy is the head that wears your crown, especially in today's environment.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some very specific things, and it's kind of basic life stuff. You got to exercise. Absolutely. That's one of the best ways of handling stress. And as the stress gets harder, by the way, go into more intense workouts. So I remember when the first dot-com crash, which was really intense in the moment, look back at it now, it just seems like, yeah, fine. Everybody got us through that. But I remember I took up boxing, and I took up boxing with a boxing coach who was pretty hardcore. Like, you get hit in the head a lot, but there was something incredibly just that helped a lot. I don't know, you want to match the stress with some kind of really physical activity. Sleeping, that's the paradox. When you're stressed, you can't sleep, but you need the sleep to handle the stress. Doing as much as you can to sleep well, or not even sleep at rest. So you can't force yourself to sleep, but you can always force yourself to rest. So it's really taking care of your body, because a body can only take, and a brain, so much stress. And anytime you start thinking you can beat it, or I'm just tough enough, it will catch up with you, and bad things will happen. Maybe you'll get angry, maybe you'll get sick, maybe you'll just collapse, so that's really important. Again, reading those challenging books is really important. And then, man, if you can have 2 or 3 really good friends you can say anything to, that's a good thing.
So I have to ask you that, and that will be my last question. The definition of a friend, because in my world, much like in yours, I hear people all the time, my friend, my friend, my friend. I think to myself, well, you sure have a lot of friends. I don't have many friends. I have lots
Yeah.
of buddies. So how does Chris Larsen define a friend?
Yeah, I mean, if you can have 2 or 3 close people in your life, you're doing well, right? So coming out of any kind of school or company, or you shouldn't expect to have dozens and dozens of friends. Those are relationships, or acquaintances, or business relationships, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need to understand, like, a friend is somebody who's gonna, be there when the worst thing happens, right? And there's nothing in it for them whatsoever other than the friendship. I guess that pretty close, but importantly, one thing I always try to keep in my head was, like, we always wanted to have a very close culture in all of our companies that I've ever been a part of, and I think we have a great culture at Ripple, for example. At the same time, I think if you're a leader or entrepreneur or whatever, you can't ever look at your employees, team members, as friends. And I'm not saying it's because you can't. I want to be careful about like the idea of a company as a family, sure, because you do care about these people deeply, and in some ways you're going through stuff that you don't even go, that's more intense than your family. But I think as a leader, they can't be your friends, because you can't ever be weak in front of a team. You can't cry in front of your team, or your board. You're always on the stage, and they're looking for leadership, and leadership does not involve you being weak. So if you can't be weak, then there's no opportunity to be friends. Plus, you got to be fair to everybody, and with friends, you don't have to be fair. You can actually, favor that relationship over others. So I don't want to be mean when I say your employers are never your friends. It's the only way it can be.
It needs to be clearly separated, because you're right.
I think
I heard not too long ago that said, you don't have friends in business, you have allies of convenience.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and
And
nothing
I
wrong
think
with that.
there's
Nothing.
nothing wrong with that at all. Incredible and impactful. And to me, that is ultimately, like in your world, it is in mine, that it is our errors that are the benefactors to our story. That what we do lives on, the ripple effect.
Okay, well said. Excellent. All right, well, great talking with you, Dustin.